There's been many a man and many a preacher that has delivered a very eloquent speaking during the Lord's Supper. But I can think of nothing more powerful than simply just reading the Word. It speaks volumes in ways that we never could. It expresses emotions that we can only dream of. But I thank you for the men who lead us in worship each Sunday. We couldn't do it without it. We couldn't do what we're here to do. But do you know those Romans who put him on a cross, those Jews who cried, "Crucify him"? They weren't made overnight. It didn't begin when they were a child. But as they got older, they learned some things from their parents, from their teachings. But as they got older, some things started to try and creep in. There comes a time when each of our lives, as we age and as we understand, that sin comes knocking. We talk about all the time that in the heart is where things begin. We look at cases of men that have gone on to do horrible things. There's even TV shows about their upbringing and the things that make them. Because we realize that those things don't happen overnight. That there's a door that is on each and every one of our hearts, and it stays closed to begin with. But then sin comes knocking. And we have two options. You can leave that door closed. You can bolt it. You can shut it. You can put the chairs in front of it, the bed frame in front of it, and you can guard it. Or you can answer the door. You can unlock the deadbolt. You can turn the knob. You can ease it open. But we're going to realize that what is waiting on the other side of that door, it ain't good. And it doesn't want anything good for you, no matter how much the world says, if you just let it in. If you maybe just crack the door. It'll change your life. I promise you it will not be for the better. If you were open your Bibles to the beginning, to Genesis, we're going to read an account, and we're going to spend some time today. The first place that word is said out loud, that word is used. The first place that sin came knocking and is called that. You probably know the story. It's two brothers, Cain and Abel. And before this time, we can probably just estimate or think they probably got along pretty good. They had jobs to do. They had animals to tend or fruits and wheat to harvest. They had a job and they have things to do. But as we did just a moment ago, before we begin, let's just simply spend time reading what it says, to prepare our minds to understand what it means. Beginning in chapter 4, verse 1. Now the man had relations with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain, and she said, "I have gotten a man-child with the help of the Lord." Again she gave birth to his brother Abel. Abel was a keeper of flocks, and Cain was a tiller of the ground. So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of the fruit of the ground. Abel on his part also brought of the firstlings of his flock, and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and for his offering. But for Cain and for his offering he had no regard. So Cain became very angry, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why is your countenance fallen? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it." As we begin, there was two brothers. Each had a different story. Each had a different upbringing in a sense. Each had a different role, had a different job. But there was something that each of these men had in common. They were human beings. They had minds and desires, wants and needs. And they both serve the one and only God. And the text says it came about a time that when they brought a sacrifice to God, and Cain brought his, and Abel brought his, and Abel brought of his flock some of the firstlings, and brought of their fat portions. And he gave it to God, and it said that God looked down and he had regard. He looked down, he accepted, his face was over what he brought. But it said for Cain and for his offering, he had no regard. He didn't accept it. The problem was not that they didn't understand what they were doing. The problem was not that God was just out to get one or the other. The problem was after God made his decision, his understanding and his wisdom and his foresight and his all-powerful and all-benevolent person, there was a response. You have two options. You can have, so my Lord did not accept my offering. I wonder why. Maybe I'll go and I'll spend time with him and I'll ask him what was lacking and how may I fulfill that next time. How may I do better? Tell me what was lacking that you had no regard for my offering. That could have been one choice, but sadly that's not the choice that was made. It said the Lord had no regard for his offering and he became very angry. The word literally means he became kindled. He became stirred up within himself. Do you know when the Bible speaks later on about murder? Do you know he goes a little further than murder? He says, you've heard it said, don't murder. You've heard it said that anybody who murders is going to be guilty in court. I tell you, anybody that's angry with their brother, they're guilty before the court. He said, you've heard it said don't murder. You've heard it said don't do this, but I tell you, don't be angry. It wasn't the murder that he was getting at. Because people don't wake up a murderer. People don't get that far just by chance. But when sin comes knocking, and he knocks on your door, and he gets there, and God says, if you do well, will not your countenance be lifted? Will not your face be exalted? Will not you be lifted up? But he gives one of the most terrifying warnings in all of Scripture. But if you do not do well, if you do what is wrong, if you do what is not acceptable, sin is crouching at your door. There's going to be a time in your life where this is going to be the choice set before you. That God has spoken, if you do well, you will be rewarded. You will be lifted up. You will be exalted. But you're going to be walking along one day, and that same warning comes true. If you do not, sin is crouching at your door. And you may be one day sitting in your living room, and you think to yourself, I've not invited anybody over. I have no plans on my calendar. There shouldn't be anybody at that door. The fact of the matter, there is. It goes by the name of sin. He does something fascinating when he explains this, but he personifies sin. He said sin is crouching at your door, almost as if you can imagine a lion. He said it's on your front porch. He said it's waiting for you. He says something really terrifying. But he says, why are you angry? And if you do well, but if you don't, it's lying at your door. There's this animal that's sitting there and waiting. You may have claw marks on the front side of your door. It won't in. And do you know what it will stop at to get in? Absolutely nothing. In our lives, we are offered many times the option to sin. And I say option because it is an option. No one can force you to sin. No one can make you have desires in your heart. As much power as we give Satan, he does not bind your hands and force you to sin. God presents the first account that's called sin as there's something else out there apart from you. And he said, and it's crouching at your door. But then he goes even further. Not only is it crouching at your door, it desires you. don't know about you, but that just gives me shivers sometimes thinking about that. He perceives it as this big, angry, hungry cat that's outside, that's clawing at the door, and he says, you know what it wants? It wants you. There's only two other times that this word is used, and it's in a relationship, marriage and wife kind of context, and when Eve is cursed and she's put under Adam's rule, it says that you will desire for your husband, but he will rule over you. It carries with it that not only does it want you, but it wants to take control of you. It wants to make every move in your life for you. It wants to cloud your judgment. It desires you. We think sin is just the actions that I do, and that's just do's and don'ts, commands that I follow or not. But I find it odd that the first time we're ever introduced to it, it seems to have a mind of its own, a one-track mind. And the most terrifying part is that it doesn't ever really get distracted and take a day off. It's not like our pets we have today that I can throw a ball and it'll run off and I can run and jump in the car. It sits on the porch. It's at your door. And the only thing that it wants is you. Romans chapter 6, starting at verse 11, says, even so consider yourselves to be dead to sin, but alive to God in Christ Jesus. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body so that you obey its lusts. Do not go on presenting your members to sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to God. Listen to verse 14. For sin shall not be master over you. He says, you're made alive. That thing out there that wants you, you can take control of it. You can defeat it. You can overcome it. We like to think, well, it's a lion. Have you ever seen a man overcome a lion? There's some stories of them. But in your day-to-day life, you're not alone. You're not relying on just you. But the minute we forget that it's out there, the minute that we think, well, it's not that big, it's a kind of a small lion. Maybe I can take it on my own. I don't really need God to help me with that one. And we try, and we open the door. You know what it does? It kicks that door and it comes in and it gets a nice comfy spot on the couch. So this is my house now, if we let it in. Proverbs 14:12, there's a way that seems right unto a man. In his heart it seems right. In his mind it seems right. He reasons that this is the path that I should go. He may reason that the lion's not that big. He may reason that I know it's out there, but I got to get out there past it, so I got to go through him. I got to get around him. You know what Proverbs 14:12 tells us? That way that seems right unto a man, that way leads to death. As we see here that the lion is presented, what should our response be? If the lion's on the front porch and he's clawing the door in, does that mean we unlock the door? No. That means we go to Lowe's and we install a few more deadbolts. That means we go take the bed out of the back bedroom and tear it apart and nail it to the front door. Are the windows boarded? Are the vents closed? Did I make sure the foundation's secure so it can't get up through the crawl space? Cain was presented with an option. But we haven't got to where he opened the door yet. If we look in verse 8, verse 7 tells him, if you do well, will you not be rewarded? Will you not be lifted up? Will you not be exalted? The obvious answer to that is, yeah, I will be. He said, but if you do not do well, it desires for you, and you must master it. And how I wish that verse 8 was not there. How I wish that verse 7 continued. It said, and he understood the command of the Lord, and he changed his heart, and he mended ties with his brother, and he prepared a better sacrifice. That'd be a fantastic story to read, wouldn't it? Let's read verse 8 together. Cain told Abel his brother, and it came about when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and he killed him. You know what he did? God said, there's a lion on your front porch, and it wants you. And you've got to take control of it, or it'll do right the opposite. And Cain went home, and he was standing in his house, and he may be even able to hear it clawing at the door. And he starts to walk, and he gets to that front door. He unlocks the deadbolt. He unlocks the knob, and he eases it open. And do you know what that lion did? Came in. He took his brother, walked him out to a field, and he killed him. Now we can't think at this time, we're 3 chapters in from creation. From the almighty life giver breathing into existence perfect creation. We understand the fall. We understand it's not how it ought to be. But life 3 chapters before this was created. And do you know what that lion ended up doing once it got in Cain's house? It said, you know what? God didn't look at your sacrifice like he did your brother's. You know what? That should have been you that God said, I regard your sacrifice. That should have been you that he rewarded. He should have been the one that God didn't regard. As he gets snugly on his spot on the couch, Cain may be sitting in his chair going, well, you know, you've got a point. That should have been me. God should have accepted my sacrifice. I'm better than he is. I gave of stuff that takes months and years and weather depending and all that, and I gave it to God, and it seemed to be not good enough. So that little heart that had a door on it, Cain opened it, and he let the lion in. Verse 8 says, because he did that, he murdered his own brother. Now, I am 99.9999% certain that nobody in this auditorium has ever murdered their brother. You may be thinking, then why in the world are we talking about Cain and Abel, and why are we talking about murder? Because you know the thing from this that does apply to you and me? You have a heart. You have a heart with a door in it. And there's a lion sitting on your porch that desires you. It may not be that that lion leads you to murder someone. It may not be that we think it leads you to that bad of a sin, as we like to call it. But the sin's still there, and it's our job to still protect it. I think about another time that this happened. Another time that a man had the same door, had the same heart, and that cat came knocking. You remember a man who looked out a window one day and he saw a beautiful woman bathing on the roof. And you know what? That cat knocked. He said, I've seen that woman bathing on the roof. You know what he told his servants? I don't necessarily want her to begin with, but go inquire. Who is she? Go find out some information about her. I want to know. And then you know what that led to? He eased that door open just to see, yep, that cat's still on the porch. Well, it can't fit if I open it just a little further. So go inquire of her. And then he inquired of her, and then you know what happened next? She ended up at his house. She ended up in his bedchambers. Ease the door open a little bit more. That cat gets to looking, and he's like, you know, that door you've opened starts to look big enough that I could fit through it. And then he ends up, we know the story, laying with this woman who's married to a man who's off fighting a battle for his kingdom. He lays with her. She goes home. She gives birth to that child and finds out she's pregnant. So then you know what? That door gets open a little bit more. Next thing you know, that cat on the couch. He ends up violating somebody else's covenant in their marriage, conceiving a child that should not have been there, and from that conception, he ends up murdering the husband of that woman. And then because of that, he was punished, and it cost him the life of his son. That's what happens when we unlock that deadbolt, when we turn that key a little bit, and we just want to see, Cain kind of swung the door open and let him in. But maybe he thought, if I just peek, if I just ease it open, maybe if it's just a little gossip, maybe if it's just a little bit of anger at them, maybe if it's just, I don't like the way they parent, or they do something that I think is wrong, but I can't prove it. Maybe if it's just, it's not that big a deal. It's one of Satan's most powerful tools, is that little phrase right there, not that big a deal. That cat is sitting on the porch, and it desires to come in. James 1:14-15 says, "But each one is tempted when he is carried away and enticed by his own lust. And when lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and when sin is fully matured, it brings forth death." With Cain and Abel, it started in his heart. It upset him. He said he became very angry. And that anger festered, and he left it. And it started out small. It was just an emotion. It wasn't external. Nobody could see it. He didn't do anything. But you know what happened when it was left unchecked and that door was left unguarded? It led him to sin. It led to death. That same is parallel in James, but it starts with just a temptation, just a desire. It's not that big a deal. I looked at that woman, but I didn't act on it. I looked at that man, but he's married, so I didn't do anything. But it's all right, because it's just a look, right? It's just internal. I haven't showed it. It's just a little bit of an emotion. You know where emotions led Cain? His heart that was left unchecked, unguarded, led to him killing his own brother. I offer today that we need to think about the things that we are allowing into our heart. The door that we have, is it guarded? Is it deadbolted? Is it got everything pushed in front of it? Or is it just the screen door with it left unlocked? Do we think that that's really going to make a big difference? So what do we do? We maybe think, well, there's no way that I'm ever going to end up murdering my brother. That's not going to make that big a difference. Have you ever seen one of these signs at somebody's house? Maybe you're walking down the street or through the city and it's on the fence and you can hear the dog on the other side that's trying to tear to get out of the fence to, come say hello. Do you know what God did? God didn't say, well, I see that Cain's probably fixing to get into something. I hope he figures it out on his own before it gets too bad. He warns him. And he says, if you'll do well, you'll be exalted. Your countenance will be lifted. Your face can be held high. You'll do fine. Then he gives him a warning. But if you don't do what you know you need to do, if you don't do the right thing, do you know what it's going to lead to? You're going to let the cat in. 1 Peter 5:8 says, be sober of spirit and be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion. And it doesn't say like a roaring lion, seeking to whom he may say hello. Prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking to whom he may devour. Some people may paint the cat up, may put bunny ears on it, may dress it up for a holiday and say, it's not that big, it's not that bad. He's even got a name. The world says, well, look, we've got one. We've let him into our house and he's not tore up the furniture. He's not went to the bathroom where he's not supposed to. Nothing bad's happening to us. And you may be tempted to go, maybe they got a point. Maybe this book that I read, maybe it overinflates how bad the cat is. But once we let it in, do you know how hard it is to get it back out? It's not a come and go visitor. Once it's in there, it's got its spot, and if you let it, it'll stay. We live in a culture where we, as sometimes men, we like to get something new in the mail. Maybe it's furniture. Maybe we go to that wild place, IKEA, where everything comes in a million Ziploc bags. And then we try to put it together. And do you know what we're often guilty of doing? Throwing away the instructions. Anybody ever done that? Try to put it together, and then what do you usually end up with? Spare parts. pieces that don't match. Maybe you stripped a few screws here because you tried to use the wrong tool. And then we go back and we're like, well, I guess I have to read the instructions. Let's not throw out the instructions and try to get it right on our own. If God's warned us what overindulging in alcohol can do, if God's warned us what observing things that we're not supposed to observe can lead to, if God's warned us what being a bad husband or a bad wife can lead to, if God's warned us what leaving the assembly and not coming back will lead to, heed the warnings. God's put them there for a reason. This is not a bunch of rules because God's a fun sponge and he doesn't want you to enjoy life. God knows the cat. God knows its owner. And God has seen time and time again it destroy people's lives. Read the warnings, but pursue what is right. God tells him, he says, if you do not pursue things that are good and holy and godly and right, things that are well, will not your countenance be lifted? Church, the promise is the same. If you don't live in a godly, righteous way, walking in the light, will the reward not be great? It absolutely will be. We think sometimes that maybe this is worth it. But what if I'm wrong? What if this is not real? What if I've just made up this whole thing? Do you actually believe the promises that are found within your piece of the Word? Do you truly believe it? Are you living for that reward? Proverbs 21:21 says, he who pursues righteousness and loving kindness finds life, righteousness, and glory. Do you know what burglars tend to do when they go to a new neighborhood to see which house they want to break in? They look for the houses on the left. No lights. Maybe the gate's left open. There might be cars in the driveway, but they don't seem pretty prepared for anything. Do you know what they do if they drive by the house on the other side? There's lights. They got their little ADT sign out in the front yard. There's a dog chained up looking at me. That's not the house I'm going to go to. Now imagine if these two houses is your heart, and sin comes up to the doorstep, and your house happens to be the ones with no lights on, the door left unlocked, and the gate open. He said, this is probably somewhere I could get into. But what if we pursued righteousness, godliness, and holiness to the point where sin walks up to the doorstep and the lights are on and security cameras are watching him and the dog's on the front porch? What if we could live so close to what our Bible says we ought to, that sin would give up? We understand that he'll still be waiting there, and he'll still be waiting for that time you crack the door open. But what if we could give him less of a chance? What if we could make it harder for him to get in? What if we had to break down 2 doors and a deadbolt and get through the bed frame? To pursue righteousness and loving kindness, those people find life and glory. As we close today, Cain absolutely had a choice. When God made his decision, he could have responded in a completely different way. But he didn't. He let the cat in. It started with just an emotion, and then God warned him, and then he killed his brother. Do we think that every sin in our life is as important enough that we should look at it and realize that that sin could lead to death? Because every one of them can, each in its own way. We like to give our categories of sin. We like to have our pet sin that it's not that bad, I'm working on it, but it's not really hurting anything. So if it takes me 20 years to get over it instead of today, it'd be fine. Are we pursuing righteousness and loving kindness? Are we looking for life and glory? Luke 6:45 says, the good man out of the heart of his good treasure of his heart brings forth good. And the evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil, for the mouth speaks from the overflow and the abundance of the heart. Church, as we look at Cain and Abel today, realize that we need to guard the door. No matter how small the cat seems, it desires you. It desires to control your life. It desires to ruin your marriage. It desires to destroy your reputation, to abuse your children. It's what the cat desires. But let's live in a way that when he shows up to the front door, there's so many security lights, he doesn't even think twice and moves on. So church, as we close today, Let us guard our hearts. Let us heed the warnings. And let us leave the cat outside. If there is anything that this congregation can do to help you in that process, if he's already in, let us help drag him out with the prayers of the church, with the wisdom of the elders, with the love of the brethren. Let us help. Don't give up. Even though he may have his claws in deep, we can get him out, but it requires you to put him out. And if he's not gotten in, don't let him. Keep the door bolted. Seek life and righteousness and joy, and enjoy the reward of a life with the door closed and the cat outside. Please come as we stand and sing.